Hola community, how are ya? How's it going? Welcome to another episode 151 of the Blender Today live show. This weekly meeting gathering that we do every week since for many years, because open source keeps changing every day actually, and we are making a weekly show. We could actually do a daily show, Blender Daily, the Tonight Show or something like that. That would be a bit too much, but it's always fun to see you. Thanks for dropping by. We have a bunch of new features today. There's a few notes. There's some geometry notes news. There are grease pencil things going on, user interface, and that is pretty much it. It's not gonna be too packed today, so maybe we can have a bit more time to hang out after the news section to move into the questions, because we are streaming live from Amsterdam. So here you go. Blender.community course in notes. Thank you to Jon for making the actual thread, fixing the focus. Yes, look at that exposure. I know. So okay, disclaimer, don't pay attention to this. This was a last minute because it's really extra sunny. Today you will be blinded, but I didn't manage to go all the way there, and it's just an experiment because it actually helps when I'm here. So that's it. How is it going? Is everything okay? Is there any question? Oh geez, 10 questions already. Let's get to it right away. The announcement of the week. There's two little things that I want to announce. One is the Blender Foundation 2020 annual report. What is it? Well, do you ever wonder what does Blender Foundation do with all the money that you get? With the 137, right? 137,000 euros every month. Well, it is from 2020, so last year was actually less. But also there, on top of this, there is donations, other kind of donations, like one-time donations that people often do. You can even, did you know that you can actually also donate crypto? Some people have been asking for it, but the that's for donate in the Blender Foundation page. In the foundation page you can find it, or actually here I think we added it. Yeah, make a one-time donation, and you can see here. So there's many ways of income for the Blender, from the Blender Foundation. Then there's also the Blender Cloud, but that's technically the Blender Studio, the animation studio, which actually, if you read the this annual report, you're gonna see what is the studio and what is the connection with Blender, and where does my money go if I am on the Blender Cloud? Where does it go? Well, all of that is answered here, and it's a very special annual report. This is very common for companies to say what they worked on during the year, or how did it go. Usually companies show the profits for the stakeholders. In this case here, because we are a non-profit, you know, Blender, there's all kind of messages, and I really like it because it starts with a more personal message by Ton and all that 2020 meant for him and for Blender, but also it goes into the this is going to be the decade of open source. Yes, but also this page over here, the freedom to create, is super nice. Ton has been working on it for so long. This is the 20 plus years of Blender open source, the message, you know, every year. I remember seeing Ton every year thinking about the mission and trying to redefine or polish the mission of Blender. What is Blender? In you know, it's more than a 3D software. What is it? And what is the mission? What is Blender Foundation? And these years it comes down to get the world's best 3D CG technology in the hands of artists as free open source software. That's awesome. The hands of artists, that's pretty good, but also is more than artists. So you can read more over here. It comes down to the freedom to create, this very nice phrase that Blender coined in last year. Also the core values: we care, there's passion, there's a community, we share, we work together, because we open everything. We're actually working right now, and we have a story vision, what is coming, and the future of Blender. There is a vision, you know, it's not like there is directions. So yes, super neat. The freedom to deploy, all the freedoms of Blender. You should check it out. And also there is of course, you can see this what I said before, the split between the Blender Institute and Blender Studio. What do they do? Like, for example, I worked for the Blender Institute, although I did work for the Blender Studio every now and then. And if I worked last year in the studio coffee run, the short film, or spring, or if they need lighting help with sprite fright, of course I'm gonna help. So yeah, it's all intertwined. We're all in the same building. Super cool, super cool. You should check it out. It's a very nice read. You can find the usual suspects over here. And the also, if you only care about the money part, it's in a very nice graphic here with nice colors. Epic Games, the fund, and everything else. So yeah, the other announcement that I want to do this week is that on Wednesday there will be a new Blender.org LTS release. So if you go to blender.org/LTS, you'll see the long-term support program, which at the moment it only has one release, the 2.83, which keeps getting updated. There has been 13 releases so far, and on Wednesday there will be release number 14. So if you are using this version, remember on Wednesday, or if you're using the Windows Store, Steam, or Snap, it's gonna update automatically. Otherwise, you can download it from here from the usual places. You're gonna see it here in a bit. And this year, actually at the end of the month, there is the second LTS, 2.93 LTS. So it's gonna be pretty interesting to see both. Actually, people would be nice to see the stats. Are people still downloading 2.83, or is 2.93 stable enough? Okay, I think that was all that I wanted to announce for today. How's the chat? How's we have what is it? We have spammers again. Switch into the geometry node section of the day. Let's start with a bang. So the main big news of the week is that geometry nodes now support curves. It doesn't mean that a geometry nodes modifier can be added to curves yet, but it means that the system itself for meshes now supports curves. So you can internally process as curves and then output a mesh, convert the mesh to real, so you get all the nice stats and stuff. The patch, sorry, I'm a bit distracted here. There is something with the chat. Timed out for 300 seconds. No, I never time out people. I just ban them. I just ban them. It's usually it's very clear when there are trolls, so timing out doesn't work. Let's see what's new and happy in Blender. This patch adds initial curve support for geometry nodes. So currently there's only one node available, curve to mesh. However, since this patch was added, there are new nodes. So actually I can just open Blender and show it to you right here. So let's see. HDR rendering at Pablo's house. Yes, full HDR. Ruthless Pablo. No, I'm not ruthless. Trollers are ruthless. The great news. Okay, let's go geometry node. So let's say I have this cube and I have a curve. You know, I want to use a curve inside. You cannot create curves yet, so you need to add a curve and then you're gonna create it inside. So for example, let's make a Vazquez circle. Let's put the cube aside. So I have this curve and I have this cube. So in the cube, I'm gonna add a new geometry nodes, and here we have a couple of nodes, not so much. But for example, let's say curve to mesh. So I'm gonna add it, and it takes a curve and a profile curve. So you can give it an actual profile that the sides. So for that, I'm gonna bring the Bezier curve you know, you can just drag and drop the object and it will make an object info node with this object there. So you should give it a curve, and then let's just connect it, and we're going to lose the cube. The cube is now a curve, which is awesome because we can, what if we give the same curve as profile curve? Then suddenly we have a profile. So I have a donut, and I can just edit the curve because it's still editable. Yeah, you can still edit it, and yeah, you can shape it, change as much as you want. There is this other node that allows you to resample. So you go to curve, resample curve, and you can basically resample from the amount of vertices that you had before. For example, if you do count, you can just make it, see, it's like lowering the resolution, or by length. So you can make it like evenly spaced. So cool with the count and the length. You can see here the data also about all the vertices because it's being converted as a mesh. But you also, yeah, you don't get curve data yet. You get vertex. That is pretty neat. What can you do with this? Well, you know, if you have a curve, you can't have. Let's go to flip to the other side. If you have a curve, you can't have particles on a curve, for example. So it's not allowed. There's no particles. However, on meshes you can, and that means that you can actually instance stuff on a curve. So let's go to point instance, and let's instance the itself. Now let's add a little cone here, and to the cube I'm gonna choose a cone, and there you go. I have a bunch of cones with the shape of a of a curve. Oh, and resampled. It looks interesting. Okay. Wow. Yeah, for each point is making this. I think I'm gonna freeze my computer anytime. That is so cool. And it's, of course, you can keep editing until you get tired of it. So wow, and it takes the radio, so I can actually Alt S and they will, wow. That's pretty neat. I wasn't expecting that. What is this value? Can I see what is? No. Like, what am I editing now when I do Alt S? Interesting. That's so cool. It is so cool. Wow. Oh, crazy stuff. Nice. That is so neat. And this is a cube with the same. I didn't even apply anything to the curve, but yeah, so cool. This is the initial curve support. Then there is a resample node, which is actually what I was just showing you as a part of another commit, again by Hans Goody. Thank you, Hans, for working on this. Yeah, super simple. Can do things like this. It is so cool, so cool. Let's go into add. Oh, the next one, add attribute curve map node. Speaking of curves, there is a new node to control attributes, but in another type of controller. You might recognize this one. It's the same one you use for pretty much every curve, like RGB curves, or for what else? Anything, any kind of curves. For profiles, for bevel profiles, for example, you use the same. So it's gonna be familiar to you. You can choose the type and then apply. Just draw your shape. So cool. So cool. This was done by Charlie Jolie. So thank you, Charlie, for working on it. And you know what else is great besides having more? By the way, this after this commit, it was implemented the parallelization, so it's actually faster, so it's multi-threaded and it can work super fast. And speaking of super fast, again, the man himself that brought us curve support, he also worked on performance improvements for the point instance node. So this is a refactor which looked pretty popular, pretty exciting actually. From this, I was reading and it's like, hey, this is nice. Generally the node should be faster and use a bit less memory. Okay, that's cool. I actually saved this item as one of the news items, and then right after this refactor he committed something else, and this is what got me oh yeah, I was blown away. So in a test there's a few optimizations. So in one test with 4 million instances with three objects in a collection, the node was around 40% faster. So from 370 milliseconds to 270. 40%. That is a lot until you read the next line. So apparently, by doing some parallelization, the test on a Ryzen 3700X, an AMD Ryzen, went from 270 milliseconds to 44. So around 8 times faster to compute point instances on a AMD Ryzen 3700, which I guess can only get even better once you have a maybe more cores, right? This is multi-threaded, so 8 times faster and 40% faster before that. So, and actually reserved memory. So is it less memory? Even more memory efficient? That is super cool. Because, you know, there is still one bottleneck here. The viewport is still slow. That doesn't have anything to do actually with geometry nodes, but in general, the viewport's still not as fast as it could, especially when handling instances. So it looks like the bottleneck now is on the viewport side of things. So if you don't have a viewport enabled and you want to and you know what you're doing basically, and you don't need a preview, maybe you can just control space full screen the node editor and then edit it. I think that would be the next big thing to improve. So yeah, that was all actually for the geometry nodes project. There is one change in the user interface side of things, but it's connected to the nodes editor. So have you ever noticed that when you add a did I add pictures? When you add a frame, usually it would show oh, I added the wrong tweet. When you add a frame with Ctrl J in the node editor, so for example, if I have here and I want to add a bunch of nodes to a frame, you do Ctrl J. Yes. By default, the frame nodes will be called frame. It will show the label frame here, which I found that very annoying because it was I had a bunch of frames everywhere, when sometimes all I wanted was just the color. So based on some feedback, the label now will disappear unless you have a label. So if you have one, you actually see it, otherwise you don't. So yeah, the next change in improvements in the user interface that I don't know how even I saw on Twitter, and this is the other patch. So I saw on Twitter this somebody at me, I think, or at Blender, and I read the Blender mentions that couldn't see when moving from the preview or the render view into solid mode. You couldn't tell what was going on wrong here. And if you've used Blender for a while, you know that it's that little cone. It's usually because of the Alt B, the clipping border, clipping region now called. But yeah, you have to know that there was no indicator anywhere, and if you had this out of frame, you wouldn't even know you were in clipping region had it was enabled for that viewport. So now when you use clipping region, so Alt B, now Blender will say, hey, clipped, in the viewport info thingy. And this is super handy because it means that even when you're out of view and you don't know exactly where you are, it's gonna tell you if it's clipped. So small little thing, but actually pretty handy. This also works with multiple viewports, of course. So if you have another viewport that is not clipped, it's not gonna show. Or if you are using quad view, it should also be where's quad view? Here, quad view. It also respects, so you can have some with clip view and some without the clip view. So yeah, small little addition. I didn't even know. I'm not a real developer. I realized that it's a setting, it's per viewport, so maybe it wasn't so hard. And actually it was very simple. If you look at the code, oh, this is for the node label before, but the other code is also super simple. I think it's like an if then basically. That is all for this update. No, they have one more for the user interface. This one was made by our friend Dalai. So Dalai did a cleanup on the external data menu on file, external data. This menu was cleaned up. I don't know if you remember, but it used to be a bit confusing, to say the least. So let's open 292, for example. So in 292, there. So in 292, the external data had like automatically pack into blend, poke all into blend, unpack all, and then it will say something about the missing files, but automatically pack what into blend? It didn't tell you what exactly was packing. So now it actually uses the word resources, which is a bit more it's easy to follow. What are the other changes? The other are pack resources instead of pack all, because we're always talking about all. The word all doesn't need to be there. Linked libraries also, pack linked library. That's it's a new option, separate from the resources. So now you can pack resources or pack the linked libraries separately. So that's why it also made sense. And some pet separators there, and removing the word all paths because it's a menu in the file menu, so you understand that it's for all. And also because there is no option to have just the one menu. So yeah, very nice clean up, long overdue. And I think we are good to move into the next topic of the day. Grace Pencil. Grace Pencil team has been working on a bunch of new operators and some user interface and user experience or key map changes. The first one is a few new operators that here they are called new append operators. However, in the latest Blender, let me check if I compile after they made the change. They I suggested some different naming for the tool because it reminded me of a copy to selected instead of append. So let me check. How is it called here? Oh, it's still called append. I didn't compile. So it's called append active material to object and append all materials to object. But actually, we have a word for this, which is copy to selected usually. The issue is that copy to selected is not consistent inside Blender. Sometimes it will replace for example, if you use the Control L Control L copy modifiers, the word copy, actually it's it deletes the modifiers in the other objects, in the selected objects, and it copies all from the active one. It's not great. It's not great because we use the same word for modifiers. So if you have one with hue saturation and one with tint, for example, if I select both and then go into copy to selected, it would actually add it or append it instead of replacing it. So yeah, that was a bit of an issue. The name changed, but the functionality is the same. So what does it do? Basically allows you to copy the materials from one object to another. So yeah, you don't have to create the slots manually, or you don't have to assign anything. I guess it won't be assigned, it was just added to the list, so you have them available there. If you want to paint, it's very important to have that at hand. And also, now that I think of it, because in the way grease pencil works, when you're painting and you want to paint with a material, you can have just as many materials as you want. You don't have to assign them. Well, in a mesh you also don't need to assign them, but having those materials available doesn't really help that much unless you want to use it for like solidify modifier or particle settings that use specific materials. However, in grease pencil it really makes sense to have all of this available, so maybe you can have one object as a library or something like that, where you have one object with 20 materials, or your palette that you use, and you can bring that object to your scene and then use them from here. Maybe that, and then copy over with this operator. That will be pretty neat. There's also a layer copy to object that has been renamed, but not after this commit. So it's all for consistency, for the best. There's a new option in the fill brush. The fill brush had a hard-coded 1 pixel dilate parameter, basically. So it would choose from when you click only 1 pixel, and based on community feedback, apparently it's better to have a setting for that, because sometimes you wanted to have it a bit larger. It's in pixels, so yeah, it's in the I think it's even in the, now let me check, it's in the, yeah, it's up here in the top bar, dilate. You can go up to 20. Yes, number of pixels to dilate fill area. That it's all, I think. There is a custom UI for adding GP objects. Yeah, this one is grease pencil / scene or collection or object line art. So once you add the line art object in the repeat operator or last operator adjust operation menu, you're gonna find that there is 2 settings available now to make it easier to change settings after you add it. For example, in front, this is like the old X-ray setting that it used to be. Well, it is still available in the object settings, in the viewport display, and it can be if you are adding objects more quickly and you don't want to go into the object and dig there for the settings. So now it's here. And the same for the stroke depth order. Now you can choose between 3D location or 2D layers right after you added the oops, I didn't have it on the view. Right after you add the new line art object. And last but not least, the shortcut for increasing or decreasing the brush size that it's usually available in other painting workflows is now available for grease pencil. It's the square brackets, yeah, bracket keymaps. So yeah, left bracket, right bracket, and that is all. I think that it's pretty much it. Yeah, there is one performance improvement that I wanted to show, just talk about it. This one actually made it in Blender 2.93 as a fix. So you're gonna find that GLSL, or you're gonna find better player performance when you're using the animation player, and that is because now it's using GLSL. So thank you, Richard Antalik, for working on it. And that it's all for today as of master, like the main branch of Blender. However, well, I have this rule that I don't want to talk about branches to hype too much about things that maybe don't make it into Blender, so I don't talk about branches in the show. However, this branch is Cycles X, and because it's so popular and it's gonna make it in Blender, there's no way it's not gonna make it in Blender. I wanted to share that the new shadow catcher is available in the Cycles X branch. What does it mean? Well, the shadow catcher wasn't working at all. It was well, in cycles it was available. It was a bit limited. People were complaining, or maybe not complaining, or like just asking for better support of indirect lighting or reflections, refractions, caustics and stuff. The shadow catcher in Cycles X, up until now, it wasn't working at all. It was disabled, the same way volumes are not working yet. However, it came back better thanks to Sergey Sharivin. It's now re-implemented in a way which does differential rendering. The path is split in a first and non-transparent bounce when the shadow catcher is hit. What does it mean? What does all mean? Well, if you scroll down to the bottom, you're gonna see that the process is a bit more involved than a single pass, however, allows to deal with indirect light caustics. So now the shadow catcher actually can give you, oh, let me switch. Look at that. Look at that. You've been asking for it for so long. And you know what? It's not even slower, actually. If you go to the task itself, to the patch, it's so cool to see the interaction. Like this patch was added by Sergey, and then you see Breath giving it a heart. That means that the patch is it's good. And yeah, you see them hanging out, talking about it, and then thanks, and then updated to cycles. It now works for CUDA and optics as well, and some time stuff, performance benchmarking. So there is no performance loss. It's just as it was before without shadow catcher. So yeah, isn't that great? So it's actually even faster in some cases, 52 instead of 57. I guess when the numbers are so low, it's just yeah, that is fantastic. That's amazing. Super cool. Cycles X, initial implementation of the shadow catcher. Remember, you can download Cycles X from builder.blender.org. Go to experimental branches and then scroll down. Usually it's one of the latest Cycles X. There you go, branch. It's actually for Linux it was updated yesterday, and for Windows was updated the 7th. And this patch it's from, let me see, because maybe now I'm telling you to go test it and it hasn't been committed. No, it's from the 5th. It should be, well, maybe we should update the, if you're on Windows. Otherwise, install Linux. No, it's gonna be available soon, don't worry. That is all. That is all for today. Actually, I wanted to talk about some of the updates, announcements, Cycles X, which is super cool to see it growing like that. You know what else is growing is Blender.Community, the new website. I shared on the Twitter of Blender.Today. I shared some screenshots of our, yeah, of a little bit, some sneak peeks of the new website, the new Blender Community website. Now even with paginated comments, so if there are, now you don't have to wait for the page to load with 100 comments on a graphical or right click select question. Now you can just click on load more and it's gonna be paginated, so it's faster. So yeah, questions. Let's go to the questions. Curves in nodes. Thank you, Jan, once again. 22 questions. Should be easy peasy. The first question, again, people, I'm reading this in the order of the votes. You know, I have little hearts here, so I'm reading those first, and then when I reach 0, which means that the question wasn't voted by anyone, I will go to the bottom because they are sorted also by time. So when there are no votes, they sort by time. So the bottom will be the ones that are in the were asked first. The first question, Jan, hey Pablo, I know the Blender Foundation has resisted the idea of allowing donors to direct their fundings toward aspects of Blender, and I think this is a good reason. This is for a good reason. You need to focus on the holistic vision for Blender and distribute funds appropriately. However, I'm wondering what you think of the idea of us of an outsider developer starting a Patreon account to fund development towards a certain part of Blender. Well, a Patreon first is gonna take you 8%, I think, between 5, 10, 8, I think percent. So I wouldn't do that, while official Blender devs will obviously continue to moderate whether or not to accept those changes. That sounds like giving money to Patreon for no reason. But so basically it would be giving to an outside developer starting a Patreon. Oh, okay, no, sorry. I didn't understand. I thought you or someone else would get the money and then give it to the Blender Foundation. You mean someone outside of Blender, or like a developer from the community, to start their own Patreon account towards a certain part of Blender? No, that's totally fine. Of course, anybody is open to start a Patreon or whatever to develop certain parts of Blender. However, remember that the code should meet the standards of Blender. So whoever starts this should have a track record, at least, of having patches inside of Blender, I think. Otherwise, yeah, maybe code something that it's a hack and it's not really following the rest of Blender, or yeah, you run the risk that of the feature not being added ever and to Blender. So that's a problem. However, the idea itself, I think it's fine. So yo, sup Pablo, right now OpenCL is being removed from the master branch. What is an API that you guys are considering to replace OpenCL with to support AMD and Intel cards? If there is an answer to that, will they still require to compile the render kernels before rendering? Not the best person to answer this. There is some info already on, I think they all have their own APIs. It's not OpenCL, right? I think they all have their own, but I'm not the best to answer this. You can check the Cycles X thread. There is plenty. It's 86,000 views. Wow. You can read at the bottom. There is a mention about this, about the different APIs. The hip metal for Apple, HIP, and CICL. Cycle click. Good names. Cycle. Yeah. So I think there are more answers here from the team mentioning it, but yeah, that will be up to them mainly to work on that. I hope AMD follows, and Intel too, especially now that they are releasing their discrete graphics cards, Intel. But I guess at some point they will require to render, to compile the kernels before running, I think. Otherwise you will have to ship Blender with the kernels, and I'm gonna make it super big, I think. Zorro Weaver. Will transferring custom normals with the new attribute transfer node be implemented soon? Currently the normal attribute is read only. We need the ability to have a custom normal attribute. The attribute transfer node cannot replace the data modifier until you can use it to transfer custom normals. That is a very good question. Is there any guys from the team, from the geometry nodes team? Is Hans around? Usually he's around. But yeah, no, I wouldn't know how to answer this now. I'm gonna get back to you. But it's true, it's only read only at the moment. You cannot change it. It should be implemented eventually though. Next, Bodic says, hello Pablo, Digital 5.5 with sound. Not sure if this is planned down the line, but is it possible to have the usual texture nodes, noise, Voronoi gradients added to the list of nodes available in geometry nodes? Well, you can have a texture already, a sample texture, and then you can choose any of the textures. So in geometry nodes, when you have, well, you probably know already that if you have a texture attribute sample texture. So basically, you are converting any texture, not only the usual suspects, but any texture into the into an attribute that you can use for pretty much anything. But yeah, I wouldn't repeat those. I would basically leave it to maybe texture nodes, the texture node editor. So hey Pablo C0101, fellow microcore user. Yep. For those that don't know, this is the little boy over here. Ting ting cling. I love the wooden sides. Bum bum bum. Long time watcher of Blender Today. Keep up the good work, it's priceless. Thank you very much. My question is rather outdated to many, but important to me. Every question is important. I freelance with Blender and I usually use the latest stable version, of course, but for reasons totally outside of my control, I am stuck with 2.76 when I do work for one particular customer. They have custom scripts using layers, etc., which do not work with later versions, although they are working on updating to 2.9 for now. For now I need to use 2.7. My problem is that I cannot use my GPU for viewport rendering. CUDA support only goes to 5.2 and I need 6.1 minimum, which wasn't implemented until 2.78. Do you know of any branches, workarounds, or anything else that will allow me to use my GPU with 2.76 and keep my sanity? I understand I may need to build Blender, but I don't have any experience in that and cannot find any info specifically for 2.76. Please help. My laptop CPU is smoking hot under the load and the lost time is costing me money in slow work. Thanks in advance. Well, you do need to compile. That is, I don't know if internally the code changed to support, usually, I don't remember, 2.76 was the last version. I think there were some requirements up from there, right? If I go to Blender.org, if I check requirements, I think 2.76 was the last. Yeah, 2.76 require OpenGL 1.4 and Windows XP. But yeah, no, nothing about CUDA though. You will have to compile Blender, that's true. But if you compile Blender, maybe you can even update the scripts to 2.78 or 79, which is pretty much the... I think you... Like, how feasible is for you to access those scripts and update them? I don't think there were big API big breakage from 2.76 to 2.79 or 8. Like whatever broke there, it should still be possible to fix. Like if we go to the release notes and then 2.80 node, let me see if I type 276. Is that gonna work? Yeah, it works. It works. So was there any breakage like at the bottom? Usually bug fixes? No. Read more. So in the wiki, release notes, bug fixes. It doesn't say anything about Python API improvements, yeah, but nothing about it. I think it's more, it's better if the scripts get updated to 2.79 and maybe just a few names that changed, but you will probably have a better luck with that. Go to Blender chat. There is a builders channel. Search in the Blender chat directory. The next question, Luiso Cherubini. Hey Pablo, hope you're doing great. Please make an option on the settings so people don't have to turn on auto smooth every time when creating a primitive. For us game developers, all the best. Yeah, that could be one way, or actually it could be a setting, or you want it all the time whenever you build a new, but you know it's slower, right? to model with auto smooth on, because he has to calculate the normals every time you transform. But yeah, I guess a setting wouldn't hurt, because people will know what they're doing. You wanna hope. Next, it's Matt V. Simmons. Yo, Pablo, I always miss a chance to ask questions, but I got this in time. Yay! I'm wondering if in the future, Blender will have an easy way of having a library of sculpting brushes. Perhaps like a folder you can dump brush files into, much like ZBrush. At the moment, it's kind of awkward, and I completely agree with you. We hope the asset browser is gonna solve that in one way or another. Right now, the way the asset browser works, you can't just have a folder where you just drop stuff and it gets calculated. Unfortunately, I wish it would work that way, but because of, I think it's performance mainly, that's not how it works at the moment. You can have a blend file with brushes inside, however, still not ideal. The brush manager is a project that has been discussed since last year or even earlier, and it's one of the, we hope, candidates for this year, a brush manager, which goes together with the asset browser, but it's a bit different. Yeah, it's in the radar, and it's gonna be tackled soon. The next question, Tim Cook. Just wanted to say thanks for the love getting shown to Mac versions. You really, Tim? Could you spare a couple developers to you know, add metal and on cycles and stuff? Just wanted to say thanks for the love getting shown to Mac versions with the release of the official ARM builds. Much love, thanks. If you're Tim Cook, you actually did the job. It was Apple that worked on the ARM M1 build, so yay. And also Stefan Werner. Also, love the increased interest for increasing the animation tools. Many thanks to the doc. That is Sivren. Stuvel is in the chat actually. And others. Yeah, and the whole team. Do you know that they are actually in Dev Talk? They share the meetings that they have, and they share what they worked on. So if you go to animation and rigging, you can see what was the meeting, what was the last meeting about, and what they talk about, and what is the current status of the different projects. So yeah, super cool. We should see that with other teams. Facundo de la Rosa. Hi Pablo, how are you? I'm doing great, thank you. Is it possible for anyone to become a core Blender developer? Yes. And how? Working on core Blender stuff. It's not gonna be easy, of course, if you just started doing Blender in general, you know, Blender stuff. It's, I mean, it's for the core Blender. You need to have knowledge of yeah, the inners of Blender, you know, from the file, the blend file structure to yeah, the core libraries, Blender kernel, and everything that makes Blender, that is not just part of one of the other modules, you know, sequencer, grease pencil, and so on. But I would say for someone that is a .NET developer and has no idea how Blender is done, or any program like it, I would say if you have any experience on with C or C++, you should be okay. If you don't, then it's a good idea to get involved. You can go to the wiki. If you go to wiki.blender.org, you're gonna find the new developer introduction. Then you have a bunch of link, an overview, advice, how to set up your environment, some resources, and a good first issue. So if you want to get, you know, wet with all the code and dive into the code and just basically make a feature or something that is a long-standing issue that people want but Maybe it's just either it takes too much time, but maybe it's a bit of monkey work. But it's always great to see the code, to learn a little bit about the code. I'll go there. So wiki.blender.org. DogBadWrench says, for those of us who are interested in using the asset browser in pre-release build, is there any value in adding our materials prior to the formal release to get started on organizing, or should we wait? I had a difficulty adding certain materials into the browser and also could not find a local folder where added items actually lived. It's not folders, it's actually blend files. It's a folder with blend files, and then the blend files itself inside should have data blocks marked as asset. That's a big caveat. No caviar. It got me wondering if I should just wait, as lots may have changed enough between pre-release and formally going live. Thanks for all you do. Thank you, Doc. I would suggest, actually some time ago a friend asked about should I it was working on a studio, and should I use Blender's asset browser, and this was like before 2.92, or use some other proprietary stuff. And my advice was actually to use something else, because at least many months ago the asset browser wasn't great. Right now the latest development of the asset browser is done on a branch. Actually, if you go to the build bot, you're gonna see a branch that is named asset browser post lib branch. Actually, this one is the development of the asset browser, but focus on the post library side of things. There is also work being done in master, but I would say this one has the latest at the time, so you can try that. And if you feel confident, I think overall the structure of how you set up your materials and your files is not gonna change, so it would be fine to start. But again, if you're in the middle of a production, maybe just wait a little bit more, at least until Blender enters the beacon 3 phase, beacon 2, beacon 3. Though you can follow that in developer.blender.org in the release status. Here you click and you're gonna see some dates estimate about the beacon 1, beacon 3 phases, where things are more stable. Here, when they are not in master anymore and they're on a branch, it means that it's only bug fixing. So from there on, you already have plenty of time to make your own. So you're gonna have time before the actual release. For example, if you want to sell assets and you want to be prepared to put it on the store or the market before or as soon as Blender comes out, there is plenty of time, because the beacon 3 phase is the longest one. Beacon 3 and beacon 4, I think. Well, it says 1 month here, but it feels longer. Beacon 2, you could almost say that it's, many new features come in beacon 2, but no features that will change your workflow. Just mainly improvements on what was added on beacon 1. Beacon 1 is the time where I wouldn't suggest you to do anything with Blender, not even use it in production, maybe, because there will be changes. However, or not make tutorials, it's for sure. If you're in the business of making tutorials, do not start with beacon 1, because the UI will change, buttons will move around. So I wouldn't, unless you make a lot of tutorials and you keep them up to date, which is also good business. I think I'm about time. Let's do 5 more questions. I'll try to answer them fast. Maybe there's not even 5. Yeah, there is. Okay, Robert Rio. Hi Pablo, Blender Bob here. I would like to know who can I contact regarding submitting materials, or even offer to do a presentation about using Blender in the VFX film industry for this fall's conference. well, great to meet you, Blender Bob. I heard great things about you. There are people having actually sharing your work here on the live stream. However, related to the Blender conference, it's not clear yet if it's gonna happen or like in person or not, or if it's gonna be just online. So wait for more news. I would say that maybe around July. Stay tuned. I will share here in the chat or in the Blender Twitter account or the Blender conference Twitter account. You should get the news there, but you will know when there is news about the Blender conference. I really hope we can have it in person. I was actually yesterday, Sunday, yeah, yesterday I walked past by the latest building that we use for the Blender conference, and I almost cry. Steve. Hi, Pablo. I just noticed that the Blender Development Fund went from something like 5,000 around to 2,500, and corporate donors were also down. Did something happen, or was there some kind of readjustment? I saw Bartek Moniexi tweet over the weekend about it, and I find it strange that, yes, I don't know if why we didn't do like an official announcement about this, but yeah, the number was wrong. Basically, it was, you can see that it was nearly halved from the actual number. It was, yeah, it wasn't counting it properly. Actually, if you did the math, the amount of money that the Blender Development Fund gets, it didn't match. So yeah, the money account, the amount was correct, but the number of individuals and corporates was almost twice. It was just a mistake in the code. So yeah, my mistake actually. Here Sibren says that my mistake. Well, at least you got the money right. That's good. That would have been a mess, but at least that one was fine. So find it strange that according to Blender won between 1 and 3 million users and only get 2,500 of the development fund. Yeah, actually it's even less because of this number. So yeah, it's not strange actually. I mean, not everybody can afford to pay for something that is free. That it's yeah, we expect people that can contribute to Blender to do it if they find some value in it and they believe that the Blender Foundation is doing a good investment with their money. But it's not, yeah, like, you shouldn't do it if you can't afford it. If you have some spare, yes, but don't feel pressure to do it, or because other people do it. I mean, some people you do it just for advertisement, you know, to put their name in there. So whatever works, but people shouldn't feel pushed to donate if they cannot afford. The best way to help is to share the news, you know, share the development fund with other people, share Blender with other people. So yeah, meanwhile, I see Blender users all the time talking about how they want Blender to compete with products from company like Autodesk, but they don't seem to want to contribute to the development fund. It's hard to go. Oh, another problem is that people. Okay, let's see. It's hard to compete with a company that generates a few hundred more million in revenue. Blender is free, but that doesn't mean it's free to develop. That's true. The bronze membership is like 5 or 6 months a month. How hard would it be for people to donate that much every month? Anyway, after seeing Bartek's tweet over the weekend, I upgraded to the gold level. Thank you, Steve. And actually, we can see here we have 2 badges. Wow, Sivren, is this correct? Like, well, yeah, because you can have multiple. Hey, Steve, the Blender Fund allows you to have multiple memberships. So make sure you canceled the other membership, the bronze, because otherwise you're gonna get charged 5 for the bronze and gold for the other one. So make sure, yeah, you do that. But yeah, another possible reason why the number is so low is that people, there are websites that allow you to donate a little bit of that money to the Blender Development Fund. One of them is the Blender Market, and the problem is that people don't know how much you donate until you actually are about to pay. So somebody shared the screenshot of buying $380, something like $400 worth of assets, software, whatever in the market, but the developers were only giving 1%. So from all those 380, which looks like, hey, I'm contributing to Blender a lot, I was actually giving $3. So in that case, I think it's even better if you're a developer and you have something in the Blender market, but you can only afford, which is totally fine, to give 1%. I would say you should maybe don't enable the heart, because it's, yeah, maybe the person sees like, oh, this developer is not contributing, so maybe I can contribute from my own pocket 5 or so, whatever, which is going to be more than the 4%, and it's going to be less of a how to call it, fee issues for everybody. The next question, and I will say, wow, okay, it's pretty long. Let's make this one the last, otherwise I'm gonna be talking a bit too much. Sansul CG, hi Pablo, I hope you're having a great day. Thank you, you too. Not much of a feature request or anything, but more of a life upgrade. There are a lot of videos on YouTube covering almost all the aspects of Blender, but some parts are often overlooked and don't have any videos covering and explaining all the details and what each button does. As MantaFlow, it's an incredible, powerful and capable tool, but there aren't many videos showing everything in detail, but the Blender manual does. The manual has everything one needs to know about anything, so if there will be a button that will open a web page on the browser and open the corresponding topic feature, that will be pretty handy. Oh, did you know about F1? If you, for example, if you are in physics and you do like fluids, for example, if you want to do anything here, you can either right click and then online manual, or just press F1 with the mouse over and it's gonna open the browser with that specific setting. So yeah, just right click, online manual, pretty much anywhere in Blender. Some sections will be more complete than others. Some will take you exactly to the setting and some may not. So this one, yeah, this one works, pivot point, but some of the other ones, especially if they are new, they might not be in the last version. But yeah, speaking of MantaFlow, it's an incredible tool built in Blender, but there are some drawbacks to using it. Super laggy in the viewport if I make a high detail explosion, and baking time that will get there with time when technology and Blender is already multi-threaded. Well, but MantaFlow not so much, I think, which is an absolute plus, but the viewport performance needs some work. Yes, that is true. I mentioned it earlier when talking about the instances in geometry nodes. If I import a smoke, sim, or explosion from another program as OpenVDB, Blender doesn't break a sweat playing back the simulation, even if it's high-res simulation. Yeah, well, it's OpenVDB. It's more optimized. Some of the solutions I came up with while spending a few days with MantaFlow and watching other videos of other programs, maybe a GPU accelerated viewport playback of just using GPU to see the simulation one frame with full quality. Maybe I can bake a high res and then preview. I don't have to make a decision with low quality simulation. C. Dot. Maybe GPU. Is that okay? Yes. A. Maybe GPU accelerated. B. Maybe I can bake. Or C. Maybe GPU accelerated real time, baking the simulation. Luna Picture, he's already on his way to developing a real time GPU, and he wants to make an add-on first and then if possible implement that in Blender. That would be awesome. Wow, I didn't know. Luna Pictures, thanks for doing this and taking your time to read my long essay. I really appreciate you interacting and keeping good communication with the community. Thank you very much. That was super nice. And I didn't know about this developer working on it and wanting to implement in Blender, which I know it can be scary, right? Implementing just a standalone app only focus on GPU accelerated smoke simulator, it's one thing, and then trying to shovel that in an existing software as big as Blender can be challenging. So props to that. So yeah, I think that's everything for today. What is the last question? Optimus, I have a proposal about geometry nodes. I think current ecosystem needs more official information about geometry nodes, not from user standpoint, but from developers' point of view. How to add new nodes using C++, Python, maybe in form of reading materials. Well, not YouTube videos, but I think there is documentation in the wiki about this. Like yeah, there should be. And otherwise, go to the geometry nodes on the channel if you want to learn and get the latest news and discuss with developers. Go to geometry nodes in developer.blender.org, and team chat is geometry-nodes. It's moderated. It's mainly for developers that want to get involved in making new nodes, in contributing with the geometry nodes or other parts of Blender. So yeah, go there if you're really interested in development. Otherwise, there is also the Everything Nodes channel, and that is all, I think. Yes. Okay. Oof. Way over time. Sorry about that. My voice is almost gone, and I'm actually doing this in Spanish right after. I added the link to the description. If you didn't know, yo hablo español, and voy a why am I speaking Spanish but with a English accent? I'm gonna be doing this live stream in Spanish, so make sure you tell your Spanish speaking friends. It's amazing the amount of people that leave a comment here. It's like, hey, your accent is weird, do you speak Spanish? Because it would be great if you do this in Spanish. And I've been doing it actually for 4 years. Way before Blender.Today, I actually started in Spanish. So that is all for this week. Wow, actually, now that I think of it, I could just put a chroma on that green and just save you from watching the end of the world here, like a nuclear on your eyes. Sorry about that. I can cover it now. Okay, cool. I hope you had fun. It's been a I thought you didn't have many things to talk about this week because there was not so much development, but the questions always keep it alive. Thanks for staying until the end. Thanks for contributing to keeping Blender around the Blender.Today show, the Blender Development Fund. I hope you read the annual report just so you get an idea where everything goes, where the efforts go in terms of people and money and time and the vision of Blender for years to come. I would say we should do this again sometime, let's say next week, 17th of May, about the same time, same place. I would say, yeah. Okay, without a warning today. I hope you had fun. I nothing else to say. Enjoy, go outside. It's the summer in half of the world. The other half, grab a blanket. See you next week. Bye.